father passing by his son's room and noticed the bed was nicely made and everything was picked up and neat. He became worried. And then he noticed a letter propped up against the pillow with Dad written on the outside. And with the worst premonition, he opened the envelope and read the letter with trembling hands. Dear Dad, it is with great regret and sorrow that I'm writing you. I had to elope with my new girlfriend because I wanted to avoid a scene with you and Mom. I really love her, but I know you would not approve of her because of her piercings, tattoos, tight motorcycle clothes, and because she's so much older than I am. But not only that, Dad, she's pregnant. Stacy says that we will be very happy. She owns a trailer in the woods and has a stack of firewood for the whole winter. We share a dream of having many more children. She's opened my eyes to the fact that marijuana doesn't really hurt anyone. We'll be growing it for ourselves and trading it with the other people in the commune for all the cocaine and ecstasy we want. Don't worry, Dad, I'm 15 and I know how to take care of myself. Someday I'm sure we'll be back to visit so you can get to know your many grandchildren. Love, your son, Josh. P.S. Dad, none of the above is true. I'm over at Jason's house. I just wanted to remind you that there are worse things in life than the report card that's on the kitchen table. Call when you've forgiven me and it's safe for me to come home. Oh, dear. Oh, boy, another growth opportunity, right? So today, I just felt inspired to talk about a spiritual practice that we've talked about many times, but it seems like it's time for a tune-up and a deepening in its application given what's happening in our world. You think? Okay. So the practice, if you haven't guessed already, is forgiveness, and most every major faith tradition has it as part of its teachings. So Christianity, Jesus, when asked how many times we should forgive, he replied 70 times 7. And as he was dying, he is recorded as saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. In Judaism, the acts of repentance and forgiveness are closely linked. The high holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and the days of repentance in between are a time to look at behavior over the past year and come face to face with forgiveness. Buddhism, in the midst of our pain and fear, we must remember that the other person brought suffering to us because he or she has so much suffering in his or her heart. The practice of forgiveness is the practice of understanding and compassion. Look at the situation in a non-dualistic way by asking the question, how can I better understand myself and the other person? In the Muslim tradition, just as it is important to believe in the mercy and forgiveness of Allah, it is also necessary to base human relations on forgiveness. Forgiving each other, even forgiving one's enemies, is one of the most important Islamic teachings. We must practice forgiveness toward those who do wrong to us. So forgiveness is a core spiritual practice. So how does it typically come into play on our journey? I think you all could answer this, but I'll just do a little review for you. So, okay, someone does something to you which causes you pain, hurt, upset, and results in a lack of peace and happiness in your life. So typically, when that happens, we react. And we can feel victimized by that. We can condemn it and we can judge it. It was bad, it was wrong, it was not fair. And often, if you recall that, if you've had a situation recently where you've experienced it, there's a visceral response in the body. Fear is present. The mind is in ready alert. And our ego engages and our personality calls the shots, right? So if we are to forgive in this instance, it depends on our capacity to feel compassion. So I can let go of my resentments and I forgive you, but you are still over there and I'm over here and I'm forgiving you for what happened because I'm doing the right thing. Forgiveness in this traditional sense has great value because it does call us to exhibit our human qualities of compassion and to call up our tolerance and humility and mercy and kindness. But I just want to take it deeper. I mean, that's great. But I feel like there's more. Because what is not forgiveness is forgiving out of a sense of obligation. We should because we are spiritual people. We ought to. But often I think it doesn't really feel authentic. Forgiving from a sense of righteousness. Oh man, just get on Facebook for 5 minutes. They're wrong. I'm right. Pretending forgiveness. We don't express the authentic anger we feel. Stems from, fear of maybe expressing ourselves. Maybe it's not acceptable to really express our anger and our hurt. Pretending to forgive stuffs that. Oh, and then we say, we forgive and forget. Yeah, right. How's that working? Well, to me, this is denial. Because by golly, if we don't remember, how do we learn? How do we really take the gift that happened from the situation? Often I think we also make excuses for the way people behave. This one's what I hear a lot. My parents did the very best they could, even though they really, really hurt me. That can be great if you believe it, but often I think it can be a way to mask how we're really feeling. It can sound really spiritual, but is it authentic? Just a question. Forgiving the person but not condoning the behavior. That can be a masquerade for forgiveness because we're still really judging the behavior, right? Honest? Yeah. Because it still entails the belief that we are separate beings and I am here and you're over there. And when I started working with this again, I started to get present to what really is at the heart of when we hurt each other is when we believe we're separate from each other. I think it's the basis of unforgiveness. For when we feel separate, we can't connect to the wholeness and worth of another person. They become an object, not a person. So what's a way that we can go deeper with this practice? Well, I found a quote by Eckhart Tolle, new author of The Power of Now and A New Earth, and he said, instead of reacting, what if we could forgive? And to forgive is to look through. You look through the ego to the sanity that is in every human being as his or her essence. And then from A Course in Miracles, forgiveness takes away what stands between your brother and yourself. I love that. Forgiveness takes away what stands between your brother and yourself. So, what I came to with this is that the root of unforgiveness is separateness, is a belief in separateness. And what if we could approach forgiveness from the standpoint of connection? I know it's difficult. I know it's not easy. But how would that look? How could that shift us into deepening this practice? I think it could bring it home for us more. I think there wouldn't be the tendency to say in us versus them so much. We could see the perspective of the person's wholeness versus the fragmented perspective of focusing only on their transgression. Because what we do is we focus on what they did. We don't really focus on the person so much. From a deeper perspective, we could claim the humanity and the divinity that we share. Because this is the thing. It's really not about what they did. It's about what it stirs in us. And in this case, I think it's an opportunity for us to look at what is this expanding in me? What is this inviting me to know about myself, about the love that I am? You know, I was reminded about the story of Azim Khamisa. I don't know if you remember that story. It's from 1995. And what happened was his 20-year-old son, who was a student, was working on the weekends delivering pizza. And so he was called to deliver a pizza to this bogus address, and he didn't know that. So he kept trying to find it, and he finally found where the order came from. And when he opened the door, he was shot by a 14-year-old gang member. He was shot and killed. And his name is Tariq. And, his father is Azim. And Tariq was so beloved by his father and his family, of course. And his father took it so hard. And he was a Sufi Muslim. And so part of that tradition is after 40 days, you are to channel grief into compassionate deeds. Now that is quite the challenge, because that's not a very long time to grieve. But what happened is that Azim reached out to Tony Hicks, was the killer, his grandfather, and said, I forgive your family, and I forgive Tony. And what resulted was that this grandfather and Tariq's father, Azim, created a foundation, the Tariq Khamisa Foundation. And this grandfather and this father go into schools teaching children principles like compassion and accountability and peacemaking. And so going back to Tony Hicks, he was tried as an adult, sentenced to 25 years in prison. And he is to get out of prison this year. And over the course of his imprisonment, Azim's family has been trying to get him paroled. Because 5 years after the incident, he finally sat across from Tony Hicks and said, as I sat across from this young man, I so wanted to see in his eyes, the eyes of a murderer, but I couldn't. And so I was so touched by that story, because what happened is he also guaranteed Tony a job at his foundation when he gets out of jail. And I know that that is quite an extreme example of what true forgiveness is from a standpoint of oneness. But I think it's such a beautiful story, because here was a devastated father who, instead of seeing this young man as his action, he saw him as a soul. He saw him as a beautiful human that had lost his way. And so this is what's possible for us as we can embrace at a deeper level what forgiveness really is. You know, it's an opportunity for us to look inside our heart and ask, what is this really teaching me? What can I learn from this? Because, you know, we're all each other's teacher, if we allow it. So I just invite you this week to look at who you might be holding a grudge against this week, or beyond, or for many years. And search your heart. What is this really about for me? What is this situation calling me to know about myself? What is it calling me to know about this person? And can I allow that growth to happen through accessing the love in my heart as a growth opportunity? I think it's one of our biggest ones. Because I know there are many of us working with things in our life. Many of us have been very hurt. And so I just invite you to just look more deeply where you have practiced forgiveness and really look. What has this taught me? Am I holding on to anything still? And can I use this as an opportunity to deepen my understanding of who I am and who this person is and what the bigger picture is? Because it's truly beyond what happened. There's more. There's a bigger picture at play. Okay, so can you breathe with me? Yeah. So this is about our freedom. You know, Azim Kamisa said he was free. He said, as I looked in the eyes of this young man, I felt peace. He felt love. And that's what's possible for us, folks. So let's affirm together. I forgive, am free to live, and so it is.